Welcome back, everybody, to another solo show of the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast. I'm excited to talk to you today about balancing family and health coaching. I think a lot of us can resonate with the need to balance both of these aspects. And I'm excited to kind of chat with you about how I recommend doing that. Where I don't always succeed, but I think the aspects that are most important in trying to achieve some sort of balance here. It is really hard when kids are younger. Things get maybe more challenging as kids get more involved in sports. I think a lot of coaches who might be empty nesters can say that there's a challenge with that, right? Maybe it's a little bit more emotional than logistics challenging. I'm going to speak a little bit from the season of just young to, middle-aged kids, kids that are still in the house all the way up through high school, just because that's what I'm most familiar with. And I believe it's probably what a bulk of our listeners kind of struggle with. But I think some of these tips can also be important for, spouse relationships or even just partners, right? Where we're kind of needing to differentiate between the balance of life and work. Right. So I'm going to share about 6 points with you. I like the way that it kind of organizes things. And so we're going to kind of go one by one and talk about them all. So, the first is understanding, I think, and validating for ourselves that being a health coach is complex in the sense that it isn't just a go to work, do your job, leave, and come home, right? There is an emotional component to it, right? We are in a little bit of like this energetic caregiving, aspect where we are needing to show up in a way that we are tender, loving, caring, and that can have a little bit of an emotional demand. So when you go from caretaking as a profession, right, to then maybe caretaking as a mom or a father, it can kind of be that you're going from one caretaking role to another and understanding and validating the complexity and maybe sometimes the exhaustion in that, right? If I'm being entirely honest, sometimes the hardest part for me is going from being like everybody's like last hope for the day, right? Everybody's looking at me to manage some sort of a crisis, whether it be, a client's health challenges and then a bad day at school and maybe my husband's, relationship with someone at work, right? There can be kind of this, I'm everybody's source of comfort or support. And that can get draining if you're not taking care of yourself, right? I did an episode on self-care and the ways that I think it's really important and beneficial, but we have to acknowledge that this is a complex field. We are on kind of we want to set a container, right, of not having clients access to us 24/7, and that's really important, right, for this aspect. But even if clients aren't contacting you all hours of the day, there is a little bit of a complexity with the amount of care that we give to both our clients, which we absolutely love, and then the care that we also have to give to our family on top of it. And being able to give ourselves the care, right, and the downtime that we need to do both and balance them both is really important. But I think sometimes just validating and acknowledging the fact that there is a complexity there is super important. Okay, so the next is space. Now, I'm talking about physical space. This one is really important for me because I work from home, and I think a lot of you do probably as well. And when you work from home and you're trying to find a balance or at least a healthy separation of, family life and work life, I think separating your space is a really important part of this, right? Are you working, on the couch and at the dining room table? And does every space in your house look like a workspace? Or is it that you have a designated workspace and then the rest of your space in your house is your home? Right? Because I think energetically, mentally, it's really important for us. I've also found that it's really important for my kids. If I bring my laptop into the kitchen and I'm trying to do something while I'm cooking dinner, my kids are like, whoa, mom's working in the kitchen and like she looks like she should be available, but she's also not. if they see me sitting at my desk, I'm working. And they know that, like, maybe let's go find dad because mom looks like she's doing something for work. And having that space designation, right? It might not be easy in the space that you have, but I think even if it's just a work, actual physical, like a desk, right? A surface space within your home where that's where you keep your laptop. That's where you sit to do client calls or billing or, social media stuff where you have kind of this, okay, if I'm sitting here, I'm focused on work. If I get up from here, I'm interacting and focusing on the house, right? My family, my kids. And it really does, I think, energetically separate the ways that we're kind of able to fully show up and be able to stay present in either our work or stay present with our family. I also find that I was working in, like, we have an office, a room that's really an office, right? It's meant to be an office. It's a smaller space. And it was dark. I just didn't love the space. And I found that I was much happier when I moved to like more of a neutral space in my house. But it was, again, a specific, like, here's my desk. This is my corner of our, little three-season porch. And I felt better there. I didn't feel like I was, kind of like locked away in this dark castle, right, where I had to do my work. I found a place in my home where I was more relaxed, the lighting was brighter, and I was also able to kind of make it this kind of sacred workspace. And energetically, it just felt so much better. Yes, is it kind of within my living space? Absolutely. But my kids know that when I'm sitting here, I am mostly concentrating on work and I'm not necessarily able to kind of do all of the mom things. So I think space can be really important, and this is very important when we talk about working from home, right? Which so many of us have virtual practices, so many of us do work from our homes, and I think kind of separating your space is important from almost like a boundary standpoint, and being able to have some sort of a place where you feel like, okay, when I'm here, this is what I'm concentrating on, and when I get up, I'm able to kind of leave this behind and put this aside while I'm present with my family. So, space is my number two, and I think it's a pretty significant one, even though it might sound kind of trivial at first glance. Third is time blocking. So, being really specific with your time, right? This is the time that I take client calls. Maybe it's the time that your kids are at school, or they're with a caregiver, or they are, doing homeschooling, or, right, your kids are busy doing something else and you are time blocking specific tasks designated for those specific times. Whether it's social media, whether it's, again, your one-on-one clients, whether it's group coaching, whether it's creating, a program or an offering, right? All of those things should be time blocked. Dr. Cabral is huge on this, and it really does help to organize not only your tasks, but your time. And I tend to time block all of the things that I can't do when my kids are here while they're in school, right? Things like one-on-one calls with clients, podcast interviews, all of the things that I find harder. It actually, my client follow-ups, I also put in this category because sometimes I get really overwhelmed and overstimulated if I'm trying to do those while my kids are home. But those end up going last. So if I run out of time, I'm able to carry those over, right? I'm not able to carry a podcast interview over to when my kids are home from school, but I am able to carry over some kind of housekeeping type of paperwork things, right? So I do carry that stuff over if I have to, but I prefer to do all of my more either impossible to do with kids here or things that can kind of get harder when I have the stimulation of kids at home. And so being really clear with what those things are for you, right? They might be different than for me. You might have older kids and you're able to take calls, one-on-one calls from your home if they're there, right? And they're kind of off doing their own thing. And it might be more important that when you have alone time, you're doing your social media because then you're not interrupted and you're not needing to, start over. So there's getting clear about what things are best done in quiet alone time and then what things can be done outside of that, right? So I save, some of like my content stuff. For instance, like last night, after my children went to bed, I did the outline of this podcast. I was kind of deciding what I was going to do for the topic, what my main points were going to be. And because I enjoy it, it wasn't super stressful, right? After my kids went to bed, it was something that I got to just outline, and that was something I was able to do while they were asleep. And so, one less thing that I have to take away from family time to do, and I'm able to prioritize my tasks in my time blocking windows of, okay, these are non negotiables for when my kids are at school and out of the house. I need to get my client calls done. I need to get my podcast recordings done. And those are much more important for me. And I can take care of some of the other written work, either when my kids are home and are happily playing outside or when they are, asleep. So it's going to look different for everybody, but time blocking and blocking out specific tasks for specific designated times, I think is really important for, again, getting clear on this is family time, this is work time, and now I'm moving from one to the other. Okay. Um, the fourth is going to be a little bit of a piggyback on that, and I'm going to talk about utilizing like non-restorative downtime. So, what do I mean by that? We all need downtime where we're just focused on relaxing. We're focused on calming our nervous system. We're focused on filling up our own cup. Okay, this is not the downtime that I'm talking about when I talk about utilizing downtime, right? You want to have downtime that feels solely dedicated to whatever you want and whatever you can kind of do to fill your own cup, right? That's the quote unquote self-care. The downtime that I'm talking about with this is you're waiting in the pickup line for your kids, or you're waiting outside of practice to pick, your kids up, or my daughter's swimming lessons, for instance, right? There's a waiting period where they kind of like do things at the end, and the parents aren't necessarily watching, right? So I use a little bit of that quote unquote downtime. That's not time where I'm gonna, do some sort of self-care, but I can engage in social media, or you could do billing, you could plan out your content, right? So there's lots of, I think, downtime as parents that isn't incredibly lengthy, right? To where you can be alone and do something really restorative for yourself. But it could be that you're utilizing some of that downtime in a way that is really constructive and supportive for your business, right? So you're not needing to then carry that over into the next day. So, like I said, it could be something as simple as doing a, social media post, or hopping on your stories and being present that way. It could be that you do your billing for the next few days. It could be that you find some little thing to take off your plate from the next day in that downtime. Now, there's times where I'm waiting outside of a practice or something of that nature, and I'm just going to sit in silence because I am an introvert and I like quiet. It is actually what gives me energy and fuels me to show up better the next day. So sometimes just sitting there is what I need to utilize, right? I need to use that time to just be still and quiet. And so I do that. But there's times where, my mind can kind of kick up and I can be thinking about all the things that I need to do. And if I take action on something that's small and simple and take it off my plate, that automatically helps bring down my anxiety or my overthinking, right? We oftentimes kind of let that hold us back from what we need to do, but oftentimes the best way out of that is to take action. And so if you can utilize some of that unstructured downtime that you find yourself coming across, right? And sometimes we can't really anticipate it. So it's not going to be part of your time blocking. It's going to be kind of unanticipated time that comes up that you can say, aha, I know what I'll do here. I can create a little bit of the content for my video that I want to film tomorrow, right? You can't film the video right then, but you could brainstorm about some of the content you're going to use so that you don't have to then do that tomorrow. So again, I think being clear with what you need in that moment, if downtime does come up, right? In these kind of little small increments of time, 10, 15 minutes or so. If you got clear ahead of time about ways that you could use that in a really constructive way that doesn't feel like you're just pushing and doing more, but actually takes some things off your plate and actually helps to lower stress, it can be really beneficial to kind of have that idea ahead of time, right? For when those moments do come up. So again, number four, utilizing non-restorative downtime, right? Not the downtime that would be carved out for self-care, but downtime that we would be able to use for doing little tasks that can kind of add up over time. Okay. Number five is delegating and outsourcing when needed, right? I think that this comes into play certainly when it's a two-parent household and you can kind of delegate and outsource some of the things that maybe are a little bit harder for you or on a specific day, right? Make things a little bit more complex for what you have on your plate. And I'll give you kind of some for instances, but on certain days, my husband takes my kids to school because then I'm not having to rush out of the house. I'm not having to do the whole school drop-off thing, and I can just stay focused on my work. It might be a day where I have a little bit, I have a podcast guest, right? So I'm gonna, do a little bit of prep for that, or I might have a show that I need to record. So delegating and outsourcing where it works for you. This could also be hiring someone to, clean the house once a month or once every few weeks. If cleaning for you is something that takes a lot of time, right? I try to convince my husband I can usually make more money than we pay the house cleaner if I'm working instead of cleaning the house. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But if you're spending, 3 hours cleaning the house and you're paying a house cleaner X, but you could be making Y and you don't like cleaning the house, right? It might make sense to delegate that. It might make sense to delegate, dinner prep to your spouse if they're home earlier than you and you're taking later calls. Getting really clear on who you can delegate and outsource to, right? Who's your support network, I think is really important. And one thing that my husband and I do that I think is really effective, especially when you have younger children and maybe children like mine that kind of get a little bit more antsy, more nudgy, more dysregulated if they feel like mom and dad are working and we're not getting any attention, is typically only one of us will be working from home with our kids there at a time. So my husband will come home from work, they'll eat dinner, and if I have things I need to finish up, I go to my desk and my husband will take the kids out. He's fully present with them. He's engaging, they're having fun, and they don't even notice I'm working. If I'm working and so is my husband, now they're either looking for something to do themselves. They're gonna look for their screens, their iPads, or they're gonna be, aggravating each other because they're feeling like they need connection and attention, and both parents are busy with work. So that's a little bit of like a non-negotiable for me. If my husband tells me I have to work from home on Saturday morning, I'm not doing anything. I am going to be present with my kids so that they feel like at any given time they have one parent that is completely present with them. And that takes a lot of communication, right? It takes a lot of teamwork from a two-parent household, and I understand how, lucky I am to have somebody else at home that I live with, right? If you're a single parent, that I think gets incrementally much harder if you're having to, balance some work stuff when your children are home. But I think then you kind of get honest and clear with them about I am going to, be working for just 10 minutes or just 30 minutes. And as soon as that's over, mom plans to be completely present with you and I want to hear all about your day. I find that kids do so much better when you kind of like prep them ahead of time, right? This is what's going to happen. Once I'm done, then I'm going to be able to give you attention rather than like assuming that they know when I'm done that's what's going to happen, right? Maybe they don't know or they're not thinking like when she's done, maybe she's going to then be ready to talk. But if you tell them, after I'm done with this, I want to hear all about your day. And I want to, do X, Y, and Z if they're looking to do something else. It can be a really good way to get them to, the buy-in, right, of giving you a few minutes of quiet time for you to finish something that you need to do, but also being able to still keep and maintain that connection. And I find that when I'm connected to my client, to my kids, there's just a much better relationship there, right? I'm not getting as much pullback. I'm not getting, the agitated, whiny, cranky kids. I think that there's a lot to be said for that. But if you are in a home where there's either two caregivers or two, parents present, I think it's really helpful that you kind of have your own specific time where you're dedicating for work while the other person in the home is dedicating some time to children, and then they don't feel deprived of that. You're able to kind of get what you need done. And again, everybody's schedule and how this works is going to look different, right? Based on, do you have two parents that work from home, right? Is one working out of the house? Do you have kids that are in school? I mean, when I was homeschooling my kids, this was really hard because they were home all day. And I had to find times to create, an environment where they didn't feel like I was just locking myself in my office and they were on their own and they were still cared for. They were still getting, the attention and stimulation that they needed while I was needing to work. So I think that being clear with your situation and finding a balance that works for you is really important. But delegating and outsourcing tasks that either you don't like, right, that drain you or don't fill you up, or that are a lot of time and not necessarily efficient uses of your time, right? To where you could maybe pay somebody else to do them while you're making more money within your business, right? Getting really clear about what some of those things are, I think is really important. Okay. And the last one, number 6, is mindset is key. I really do. And I just kind of alluded to this a little bit, but we're looking for like a positive, flexible mindset when it comes to this stuff. Okay. Balance is not about perfection. We are not going to create a perfect balance. Balance is something that inherently has movement, right? Some days this is going to work beautifully. Some days there could be a time where it doesn't work, right? Maybe you plan on your spouse being home and doing, something for your business, but something comes up for them at their work, and now you're having to juggle things, right? It's all about understanding that this is kind of a ideally laid out plan and then letting go of the perfection. Keeping a positive understanding that life is going to ebb and flow as it needs to, right? Ultimately, my number one priority is my children. They are. And so I am always going to prioritize their well-being. My clients, absolutely, my business, yes, that is all really important, right? Being able to show up effectively for your clientele, for Equal Life, for me, and certainly for whatever else you're doing, social media, that all absolutely needs to take precedent, right? If you're trying to build a business, but getting clear on what does this ideally look like? And then letting go of the perfection of it and allowing life to happen, knowing that there really is no perfect day. It ends up being what it is. You got your tasks done, your children felt loved and cared for, your business is moving in the right directions, your clients are thriving and happy, right? It's all about creating balance. Some days your kids are going to be dysregulated. You might have a disgruntled client. It's possible that, things don't feel like they're going your way. And understanding that like it's gonna switch the tide is gonna change, right? We never stay in one season forever. And if it feels hard in the season that you're in, knowing that you'll eventually move out of that and perhaps into an easier season, right? I mean, I remember when my kids were young, like I would leave my babies to go and personal train at 5:30 in the morning. When I think back to that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I just did it because I knew it was like part of what I wanted to sacrifice for the well-being of my family and our financial future. But I think back like that, I think that was hard. And I just like did it and I knew that it was what I had to do. But oftentimes I think we we kind of lose sight of the long-term like goal, right? Just because it might feel hard in the moment doesn't mean it's not planting the seeds for an easier, more balanced, higher freedom future, right? And we have to kind of keep that mindset of being flexible, not assuming that every day is going to go perfectly, and then letting go of the guilt when it doesn't. I again will think back to like those early days when my kids were babies, and like I could look back and think of like how guilty I feel that like I missed out on a lot of time with them when they were newborns. But the truth is maybe we wouldn't be in the situation to enjoy life the way that we do now if I hadn't been. Maybe it's that a lot of things would have looked different, right? And so guilt is a low vibration emotion. Under that can sometimes be sadness, or under that can sometimes be anger or shame, right? Get to the root of that emotion and get clear and honest with yourself about maybe what's under it so that you can process it and move it. But the balance and the mindset is about flexibility and not about perfection, right? We are looking to support our family and support our clients from a place that feels well connected and well balanced without over clinging to the perfection of it all. And I think if you can keep that key mindset, then every day that kind of comes is a new day to, again, is this working? Do I need to pivot? What does the balance look like today? And could I create a better one? And I think that that is a great direction to be heading, especially if you're always thinking of could this be improved, right? And rather than getting yourself down on why is it not working, and constantly kind of tweaking and giving yourself the support and the grace as you move through the process. Okay. Thank you so much for being here for another episode of the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast. I hope you found these tips helpful, and I'll look forward to the next show. Bye bye.